Scripture to consider before the news. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. He that will confirm a covenant will be the Prince of the Covenant, and that is looking to be Prince Mohammed bin Salman, because the number of his name is the number of the beast, when looked at with the practice of Gematria using the prime cipher. Gematria is an alphanumeric code of assigning a numerical value to a name, word or phrase based on its letters. A single word can yield multiple values depending on the cipher used. The prince also comes from a line of 5 kings that are fallen and one that is, which is his father King Salman. The patriarch of the royal family of Saud also has the number of the beast to his name when looked at with the Sumerian cipher, King Ibn Saud. We can be looking at fulfillment of scripture when Saudi Arabia comes into a deal with Israel. Because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us. For we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves. That we referenced is the nation of Israel making the deal with the Prince of the Covenant, and with 6 Arab nations so far with the Abraham Accords, and the world economies destroyed by lockdowns. This world is now primed to move into Israel's final prophetic week spoken of by Daniel the prophet, the 70th week. The last half of the final week will be the kingdom of the beast and new world order. It is coming fast for those with eyes to see. Now unto the news. Saudi FM says ties with Israel would bring tremendous benefit to Middle East. But Prince Faisal bin Farhan reiterates that normalization is very much dependent on progress in Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Normalization with Israel would bring tremendous benefit to the region, the Saudi foreign minister has said, but such an accord with the kingdom would depend on progress in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Under the Abraham Accords brokered by former U.S. President Donald Trump last year, 4 Arab countries, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco and Sudan, agreed to normalize ties with the Jewish state. But Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan said Thursday that any deal with Saudi Arabia was very much dependent on progress with the peace process. He noted that normalization had been on the table since the introduction of the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative on the condition of reaching resolution with the Palestinians. I think normalizing Israel's status within the region would bring tremendous benefit to the region as a whole, he said during an interview with CNN. It would be extremely helpful both economically but also socially and from a security perspective. But such a process can only be successful if we address the issue of the Palestinians and if we are able to deliver a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders that gives the Palestinians dignity and gives them their rights. Gulf powerhouse Saudi Arabia has repeatedly affirmed its decades-old policy of not establishing formal ties with Israel until a deal is reached to resolve the conflict with the Palestinians. But mutual concern over Iran has gradually brought Israel and Gulf countries closer, and Riyadh has quietly been building relations with the Jewish state for several years. In the first visit of its kind, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveled to Saudi Arabia in November, where he met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Netanyahu was on the ground in Neom, a Red Sea city, for more than 3 hours for the first known high-level meeting between an Israeli and Saudi leader. He was accompanied by Mossad intelligence chief Yossi Cohen, Hebrew media reports said. News of the meeting was confirmed by Israel's education minister Yoav Gallant. I congratulate the Prime Minister on this amazing achievement, Gallant said on Army radio. The fact that the meeting took place and was made public, even if it was in only a semi-official way, is something of great importance. He said it indicated the growing, warm acceptance of Israel by the Sunni world, and that this was something our ancestors dreamed about. Saudi Arabia officially denied that the meeting had taken place. In the final weeks before the 2020 presidential elections, Trump named Saudi Arabia as likely to be among about 10 further countries normalizing relations with Israel. In related news, Saudi Crown Prince, Putin, Macron discuss Middle East Green Initiative. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, made a phone call on Thursday to Russian President Vladimir Putin, the Saudi press agency reported. During the telephone conversation, they reviewed the Middle East Green Initiative, which the Crown Prince unveiled last week. The campaign sees Saudi Arabia planting 10 billion trees in coming decades and working with other Arab states to plant another 40 billion trees, to reduce carbon emissions and combat pollution and land degradation. The initiative also aims to enhance the efficiency of oil production and increase the contribution of renewable energy, in addition to multiple efforts to preserve the marine and coastal environment, and increase the percentage of natural reserves. The Russian president welcomed the Saudi initiative, affirming support for the kingdom's efforts to achieve its objectives, SPA added. Crown Prince Mohammed also held a similar telephone call with French President Emmanuel Macron to discuss the initiative. Meanwhile, British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab welcomed the initiative. In a statement, he said, "The United Kingdom appreciates Saudi Arabia's plan to plant 10 billion trees, combat pollution and preserve marine life as an important step in its climate ambition. As chair of the 26th UN Climate Change Conference, we will work with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to support their endeavors to protect the planet," he added. James Cleverly, British Minister of State for Middle East and North Africa, described as positive Saudi Arabia's commitment to the environment. "We here at the Watchman report see climate change as a deception for when we hit the last half of the 70th week where the true living God will start to pour out his wrath on the earth for worshipping the beast in his global kingdom. They will say it is not God, but climate change that is doing this. Watch." Lastly, at a daily briefing, State Department spokesman reiterates, U.S. believes Judea and Samaria are occupied. Scripture to consider. "I will also gather all nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land." God's land of Israel will be parted by the upcoming two-state solution, something that Saudi Arabia has noted needs to be in place before they make a deal with Israel. As it is written by the prophet Joel. U.S. State Department spokesman and Jesuit-educated Ned Price has said that Israel's occupation of Judea and Samaria is a historical fact. At a daily briefing, Price said, "It is a historical fact that Israel occupied the West Bank, Gaza, and the Golan Heights after the 1967 war. That's precisely why the 2020 Human Rights Report uses that term in the current context of the West Bank. It has been the long-standing position of previous administrations of both parties over the course of many decades. Do we think that the West Bank is occupied? Yes," he added. Asked if settlement activity in Judea and Samaria or construction in eastern Jerusalem hurts prospects for a two-state solution, Price said, "We believe when it comes to settlement activity that Israel should refrain from unilateral steps that exacerbate tensions and that undercut efforts to advance a negotiated two-state solution. That includes the annexation of territory. That includes settlement activity. We've been equally clear when it comes to the potential actions of the Palestinians," Price added, "whether that is incitement to violence, providing compensation for individuals in prison for acts of terrorism. That, too, moves us further away from a two-state solution. Our goal in all of this is to advance the prospects for that two-state solution." On Tuesday, the U.S. State Department published its annual report on human rights violations, referring to Judea, Samaria, Gaza, Eastern Jerusalem and the Golan Heights as territories occupied by Israel. The title, "Israel and the Occupied Territories," was the title used by the State Department until the Trump administration changed the custom, after President Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. The 2020 report, which is the first to be released during the Biden administration, uses the label, Israel, the West Bank and Gaza, the same chapter name from the last two reports issued during the Trump administration. Scripture to consider. "And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." Can you prove your name is in the book of life using the scriptures alone? Probably not. BeingJustified.com can help you while in the land of the living.